The bucket slipped from Lillian Sawyer's frost-bitten fingers and clattered against the barn floor, spilling what little water she had managed to haul from the frozen pump. And she knew without looking up that Silas Thornton would make her pay for the waste. The February wind of 1885 howled through the gaps in the barn walls, cutting through her thin cotton dress like 1,000 knives, but she did not dare go inside for warmth. That privilege was reserved for the livestock. Thornton had told her more than once, and lately she had begun to believe he meant it literally. She had been working for the Thornton Ranch outside Guthrie, Oklahoma for 8 months now, ever since her father had died and left her with nothing but debts she could not pay. Silas Thornton had offered her work as a housekeeper, and desperate as she was, Lillian had accepted without asking enough questions. She had learned quickly that Thornton's idea of employment was closer to indentured servitude, and his wife Martha was no better. Between the two of them, they had ground Lillian down from a spirited 20-year-old woman into something that barely resembled a person anymore. Her hands were raw and bleeding from the cold and the endless work. She had been awake since 4 that morning, hauling water, feeding chickens, scrubbing floors, cooking meals she was not allowed to eat, and now tending to the horses that received better care than she did. The animals had warm blankets and regular food. Lillian had a threadbare quilt in an unheated storage room, and whatever scraps the Thorntons did not want, she bent to pick up the bucket, her movements slow and painful. Everything hurt these days. Her back ached from sleeping on the hard floor, her stomach cramped with hunger. Her feet were wrapped in rags because her only pair of shoes had fallen apart weeks ago, and Thornton had laughed when she asked for new ones. "You have not earned them," he had said, his thick jowls shaking with amusement. "Maybe if you worked harder I might consider it." She worked 16 hours a day, sometimes more. There was no harder to work. The barn door swung open with a crash, and Lillian flinched instinctively, her body preparing for whatever punishment was coming. But it was not Thornton's heavy tread she heard. These footsteps were different, lighter but purposeful, accompanied by the jingle of spurs. "Is Thornton around?" The voice was deep and warm, with a slight drawl that spoke of time spent under open skies. Lillian looked up slowly, afraid to hope for any kindness, and found herself staring at a tall man silhouetted in the doorway. As he stepped further into the barn, she could see him more clearly. He was perhaps 26 or 27, with dark hair that fell just past his collar and eyes the color of whiskey in sunlight. He wore a thick sheepskin coat over dusty work clothes and a worn hat that he removed as he looked at her. His eyes widened slightly, and she saw something flicker across his face. Shock, perhaps, or concern. She must look worse than she thought. "I asked if Thornton was around," he repeated, his voice softer now, but his gaze never leaving her face. "He is in the house," Lillian managed, her voice hoarse from disuse. The Thorntons did not like her to speak unless spoken to, and even then they preferred she keep her answers short. The man nodded slowly, but he did not move toward the house. Instead, he took a step closer to her, and she instinctively backed away. He stopped immediately, holding up one hand in a peaceful gesture. "I am not going to hurt you," he said quietly. "My name is Benjamin Stone. I am here about buying some horses." Benjamin Stone. The name meant nothing to her, but there was something about the way he looked at her that made her chest tighten with an emotion she could not name. It was not pity exactly, though there was sympathy in his gaze. It was something more like anger on her behalf, which seemed impossible since he did not even know her. "You are bleeding," he observed, nodding toward her hands. Lillian looked down at them as if seeing them for the first time. Blood had seeped through the cracks in her skin and dried in dark lines across her palms. "It is nothing," she said automatically. I need to finish with the horses. In this cold, with your hands like that. Benjamin's jaw tightened. Where are your gloves, your coat? She almost laughed at the absurdity of the questions, but laughter required energy she did not have. I do not have any. You do not have. He trailed off, his eyes moving over her systematically now, taking in the thin dress, the rag-wrapped feet, the way she was shivering despite her attempts to hold still. How long have you been working here? 8 months. And Thornton has not given you proper clothes, shoes. The anger in his voice was clearer now, barely controlled. I have not earned them. The words came out automatically, Thornton's voice echoing in her memory. Benjamin stared at her for a long moment, and she could see his hands clenching and unclenching at his sides. Then he turned on his heel and strode toward the house without another word, his jaw set in a hard line. Lillian's heart hammered in her chest. She should not have said anything. She should have lied, told him everything was fine. Now there would be trouble, and Thornton would blame her for it, and she would pay the price. She always did. She tried to focus on the horses, running her damaged hands along their warm flanks, drawing what little comfort she could from their solid presence. But she could hear raised voices from the house now, muffled but clearly heated. Benjamin's voice, low and controlled but forceful. Thornton's, loud and defensive. Martha's shrill tones joining in. The argument went on for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes. Then the front door of the house slammed open so hard that Lillian heard it even over the wind. Heavy footsteps pounded across the frozen ground, and Silas Thornton burst into the barn with Benjamin Stone right behind him. Thornton's face was florid with rage, his small eyes fixed on Lillian with a hatred that made her take an involuntary step backward. "You have been complaining to strangers about your situation here," he demanded, advancing on her. "You ungrateful little witch, after everything I have done for you." "I did not complain," Lillian said quickly, her voice shaking. "I swear, I just answered his questions." "Liar!" Thornton raised his hand, and Lillian braced herself for the blow she knew was coming. It never landed. Benjamin moved faster than she would have thought possible for a man his size, stepping between her and Thornton and catching the older man's wrist in an iron grip. "You lay one finger on her, and I will break your arm," he said, his voice deadly calm. Thornton tried to wrench his hand free and failed. "She is my employee. I will discipline her as I see fit. She is a human being, and you have been treating her worse than livestock." Benjamin released Thornton's wrist with a slight push that sent the older man stumbling backward. "In fact, I would say your horses have a damned sight better life than she does. How I treat my workers is none of your concern. It is when you are violating basic human decency." Benjamin's voice was still controlled, but there was steel underneath it. "She is malnourished, frozen, working in conditions that would kill most people, and you have not even given her proper shoes. That is not employment. That is slavery, and I will not stand for it." "Then take your business elsewhere," Thornton spat. "I do not need your money or your judgment." "Oh, I intend to take something elsewhere." Benjamin turned to Lillian, and his expression softened slightly, though the anger still simmered in his eyes. "Miss, do you have anything you need to gather, any personal belongings?" Lillian stared at him, not understanding. "What?" "She is not going anywhere," Thornton blustered. "She owes me for 8 months of room and board." "Room and board." Benjamin's laugh was harsh and humorless. "You have been starving her and making her sleep in an unheated shed. You have not paid her a cent, have not given her proper clothing or medical care, and you have been working her near to death. I would say if anyone owes anything here, it is you owing her. I will have the law on you for theft. Go ahead. I would be happy to have a judge examine your employment practices." Benjamin kept his eyes on Lillian. "Do you have anything you need to get?" She shook her head slowly. "I have nothing." The look that crossed Benjamin's face at those words was something between fury and heartbreak. He shrugged out of his heavy sheepskin coat and draped it around her shoulders. It was warm from his body heat and smelled like leather and sage and horses. Lillian wanted to bury herself in it and never come out. "She is coming with me," Benjamin said flatly, and there was something in his tone that said he would fight anyone who tried to stop him. "You cannot just take her," Thornton protested, but he was backing away now, perhaps recognizing that Benjamin was younger, stronger, and far more capable in a physical confrontation. "Watch me." Benjamin put a hand lightly on Lillian's back, guiding her toward the door. She went, too stunned to resist, too exhausted to question what was happening. Part of her expected Thornton to follow, to drag her back, but he just stood there sputtering with impotent rage. Martha had come out onto the porch of the house, her arms crossed over her thin chest. "Ungrateful girl," she called out. "After we took you in when you had nothing." Benjamin paused and looked back at her. "Madam, I suggest you and your husband spend some time thinking about how you treat people. Because if I hear you have done this to anyone else, I will make it my personal mission to ensure everyone in the territory knows what kind of people you are." He did not wait for a response, just kept walking with Lillian beside him. His horse was tied to the fence near the house, a beautiful bay gelding with intelligent eyes. Benjamin helped Lillian up into the saddle with surprising gentleness, then swung up behind her. She was so light that the horse barely noticed the extra weight. "Hold on to the saddle horn," Benjamin instructed softly, reaching around her to take the reins. His arms formed a protective circle around her, and for the first time in 8 months, Lillian felt safe. They rode away from the Thornton ranch at a steady pace, not hurrying but not dawdling either. Lillian could feel Benjamin's warmth behind her, could feel the steady rhythm of his breathing. The coat around her shoulders blocked most of the wind, and slowly, very slowly, she stopped shivering quite so violently. "Where are we going?" she asked after they had been riding for several minutes. "My ranch. It is about 5 miles from here." He paused. "I have a housekeeper, Mrs. Chen. She is a good woman, a widow who needed work. She will help you get cleaned up and fed. Then we can figure out what comes next." "Why did you do that?" The question burst out of Lillian before she could stop it. "You do not even know me." Benjamin was quiet for a moment. "My mother died when I was 15, he said finally. "My father was not a good man. He drank, and when he drank, he got mean. I was big enough to fight back, but my sister Clara was only 12. She could not defend herself." His voice went rough with old pain. "By the time I was 18, I had saved enough money to take Clara and leave. We went to Texas, made a life for ourselves. She is married now, living in San Antonio with a good man and 2 children." He fell silent, and Lillian waited, sensing there was more. "A few years back, I was in a town in New Mexico. There was a girl working in a saloon, could not have been more than 16. The owner treated her like dirt, worked her to the bone, took all her wages for supposed debts. I saw her one day and she reminded me so much of Clara. The same look in her eyes, like the light had gone out." He took a breath. "I could not save her. I tried, but she would not leave, too afraid of what the owner would do. A month later, I heard she had died. Pneumonia, they said, but really it was neglect and exhaustion." Lillian felt tears prick at her eyes, the first tears she had shed in months. She had thought herself too dried up inside for crying. "So when I walked into that barn today and saw you," Benjamin continued, "I saw that same look, and I thought, not again, not if I can help it." His arms tightened slightly around her, protective. "I am sorry if I overstepped. If you want me to take you somewhere else, into town maybe, I will, but I could not leave you there." "Thank you," Lillian whispered, and the words felt inadequate for what he had done. He had saved her life. She knew that with certainty. Another month, maybe 2, and she would have been dead from cold or starvation or simple despair. They rode in silence after that, and Lillian let herself relax incrementally into the saddle, into the warmth of Benjamin's coat, into the simple miracle of being away from the Thorntons. The landscape around them was winter brown and stark, but the sky was a bright, clear blue, and the sun was beginning to break through the clouds. It felt like an omen, though Lillian was almost afraid to hope. Benjamin's ranch came into view as they crested a low hill. It was not a large spread, but it was well maintained, with a sturdy house, a good-sized barn, and several outbuildings. Smoke rose from the chimney of the house, a welcoming sign of warmth and life. Lillian felt something loosen in her chest at the sight. As they rode into the yard, a small figure emerged from the house. The woman was middle-aged Chinese, with her dark hair pulled back in a neat bun and an apron tied around her waist. Her eyes widened as she took in the scene, Benjamin with a half-frozen woman in front of him. "Mrs. Chen," Benjamin called out as he dismounted, then reached up to help Lillian down. Her legs nearly buckled when they hit the ground, and he steadied her with a hand on her elbow. "This is Miss Sawyer. She needs help, Mrs." Chen took one look at Lillian and launched into rapid speech, a mixture of English and what Lillian assumed was Chinese. The gist of it was clear enough. She was appalled by Lillian's condition and already making plans to remedy it. "Come, come, Mrs." Chen said, taking Lillian's arm with surprising strength for such a small woman. "Bath first, then food, then proper clothes. Mr. Benjamin, you put the horse away. This is woman's work now." Benjamin looked like he wanted to argue, but something in Mrs. Chen's expression stopped him. He just nodded. "Take good care of her," he said quietly. "Of course," Mrs. Chen said, as if the suggestion that she would do anything else was insulting. She led Lillian into the house, keeping up a steady stream of commentary. "Terrible, terrible. What kind of people do this? No shoes, no coat, hands all bleeding. We fix this. You see, we fix this." The inside of the house was warm and smelled like bread and coffee and wood smoke. It was clean but lived in, with furniture that looked comfortable rather than fancy. "Mrs. Chen led Lillian through the main room and into a bedroom, then through another door into a small washroom. "We heat water," Mrs. Chen said decisively. "You sit. Do not move." Lillian sat on a wooden stool, too overwhelmed to do anything else. "Mrs. Chen bustled out and returned a few minutes later with a large pot of hot water, which she poured into a metal tub. She made several more trips, adding cold water from a pitcher until the temperature was right, then helped Lillian out of the Thorntons' threadbare dress. The older woman's sharp intake of breath told Lillian what she already knew. She was covered in bruises, some old and fading, others fresh and dark. There were scars, too, from where the skin on her hands and feet had cracked and bled repeatedly without proper time to heal. "They did this to you," Mrs. Chen said, and it was not a question. "The Thorntons," Lillian confirmed quietly. Mrs. Chen muttered something in Chinese that sounded thoroughly unflattering, then guided Lillian into the tub. The warm water stung at first against her raw skin, but then the heat began to seep into her bones, chasing away the cold that had been her constant companion for months. Lillian could not stop a small sound of relief from escaping. I know, Mrs. Chen said more gently. "You soak." "I get soap." She washed Lillian's hair with a gentleness that brought tears to Lillian's eyes again. No one had touched her with kindness in so long that she had almost forgotten what it felt like. Mrs. Chen cleaned the wounds on her hands and feet, tutting over each one, then helped her out of the tub and wrapped her in a soft towel. Now we dress these, the older woman said, producing bandages and a tin of salve that smelled like herbs and honey. She worked with practiced efficiency, wrapping Lillian's hands and feet carefully. "You lucky Mr. Benjamin found you. He is good man, good heart." "He saved my life," Lillian said softly. "Yes, he did this before, save people, Mrs. Chen finished with the bandages and helped Lillian into a clean nightgown that was soft against her skin. "My husband, he died 3 years ago. I have nowhere to go. Mr. Benjamin, he hire me, give me place to live, treat me with respect. He is not like most men. He sees people, you understand. Not what they can do for him, but who they are." Lillian understood. Benjamin Stone was rare, a man who looked at suffering and could not walk away. She wondered how many people he had helped over the years, how many lives he had changed with simple decency. Mrs. Chen led her to the bedroom and tucked her into the bed like a child. The mattress was soft, the quilts warm and clean. "You sleep now," the older woman said firmly. "I bring food later." "I should help," Lillian protested weakly. "I should work." "You rest," Mrs. Chen corrected. "That is your job today. Rest and heal. Tomorrow we talk about work." Lillian wanted to argue, but her body had other ideas. The warmth, the softness of the bed, the simple fact that she was safe all combined to drag her down into sleep before she could form another word. She woke once, disoriented and afraid, but Mrs. Chen was there with a tray of food. Soup with real meat in it, bread with butter, hot tea with honey. Lillian ate slowly, afraid her shrunken stomach would rebel, but the food stayed down. Mrs. Chen watched with satisfaction, then took the tray away and let Lillian sleep again. The second time she woke, it was to find sunlight streaming through the window. Morning then, or perhaps afternoon. She had lost track of time. The bedroom door was slightly ajar and she could hear voices from the main room. "How is she?" That was Benjamin's voice, low and concerned. "Sleeping," Mrs. Chen replied. "She is very weak, malnourished, many bruises, many wounds. She needs time to heal. Can she stay here?" "I know it is not proper, an unmarried woman in a bachelor's house, but I do not know what else to do. Taking her into town would mean questions, and I am not sure she is up for that yet." "She stays," Mrs. Chen said firmly. "Proper or not proper, this is where she is safe. People want to talk, let them talk. We know the truth." "Thank you, Mrs. Chen. You are a good man, Mr. Benjamin. Your mother would be proud." There was a pause, and when Benjamin spoke again, his voice was thick with emotion. "I hope so." Lillian lay in the bed listening to them, and felt something warm unfold in her chest. Gratitude, certainly, but something else too. Something that felt dangerously like hope. She stayed in bed that day and most of the next, sleeping more than she had in months, eating the food Mrs. Chen brought her at regular intervals. The older woman had an endless supply of herbal remedies and seemed to have made it her personal mission to nurse Lillian back to health. On the third day, Lillian felt strong enough to get out of bed. Mrs. Chen had left a dress hanging on the back of a chair, simple but clean and warm, with a pair of knitted stockings and soft leather shoes. They were slightly too large, but after months of going barefoot or wearing rags, they felt like luxury. She dressed slowly, her muscles still weak, then made her way out of the bedroom. The house was quiet, and for a moment she thought she was alone. Then she heard a sound from outside and moved to the window. Benjamin was in the corral, working with a young horse. He moved with easy confidence, his voice low and soothing as he ran his hands along the animal's neck and flanks. The horse, skittish at first, began to calm under his touch. Lillian watched, fascinated, as man and horse moved together in a kind of dance, building trust through patience and gentleness. "He is good with horses," Mrs. Chen said from behind her, making Lillian jump. The older woman had appeared without a sound. Good with all animals. Good with people too when they let him be. How long has he had this ranch? Lillian asked. 5 years. He saved money working on other ranches, then bought this land and built the house himself. Works hard, that one. Up before dawn, working until dark, but he is fair. Treats everyone with respect. Mrs. Chen smiled slightly. You are good now. You want to go outside? Lillian nodded. She was tired of being inside, tired of being weak. The sunshine looked inviting, and she wanted to thank Benjamin properly for what he had done. Mrs. Chen helped her into a warm jacket, one that actually fit, then opened the door. The cold air was bracing but not unbearable with proper clothing. Lillian made her way slowly across the yard to the corral, where Benjamin was still working with the horse. He looked up as she approached, and a smile broke across his face. It transformed him, made him look younger and less careworn. Miss Sawyer, it is good to see you up and about. Please call me Lillian. She rested her arms on the fence rail, mindful of her bandaged hands. I wanted to thank you again, for everything. You do not need to thank me for doing the right thing. He gave the horse a final pat and walked over to the fence. How are you feeling? Better, stronger. She hesitated. Mrs. Chen said I could stay here for a while. Is that truly all right with you? Of course. You can stay as long as you need. He looked at her seriously. I do not expect anything from you if that is what you are worried about. You do not owe me work or payment or anything else. You are free to leave whenever you want, though I would prefer you wait until you are fully healed. Tears pricked at Lillian's eyes again. She seemed to be crying constantly these days, but after months of being too numb to feel anything, the emotions were overwhelming. You are very kind, she managed. I am trying to be decent, Benjamin corrected gently. There is a difference. He paused, his gaze searching her face. What happened, Lillian? How did you end up with people like the Thorntons? She told him, haltingly at first, then with more confidence as he listened without judgment. About her father dying suddenly of a heart attack. About discovering he had debts she had not known about, debts that consumed everything they owned. About Silas Thornton approaching her at the funeral with his offer of employment. He made it sound like charity, she said bitterly. Like he was doing me a great favor. I was too desperate to see the truth. That is what people like him count on, Benjamin said, anger flickering in his eyes again. They prey on the desperate and the vulnerable. It is not your fault. I should have left. I should have found another way. Where would you have gone? With no money, no family, no references. He shook his head. You survived, Lillian. That is what matters. You survived until someone could help you. The horse had wandered over and was nosing at Benjamin's pocket, looking for treats. He produced a piece of apple and fed it to the animal with a laugh. This is Dancer. She is a 2-year-old I am training for a rancher over in Stillwater. Sweet-natured but nervous. She just needs patience. She is beautiful, Lillian said, reaching out tentatively to stroke the horse's soft nose. Dancer regarded her with large, gentle eyes, then snuffled at her hand. You like horses. I always did. We had an old mare when I was growing up. She died when I was 16 and we could not afford another one. The memory made her sad, but it was a clean sadness, not the grinding despair of her time with the Thorntons. You are welcome to spend time with the horses here whenever you like, Benjamin offered. In fact, once you are feeling stronger, if you want to help with them, I would be grateful. I am trying to expand the training operation, but there is more work than one person can handle. You would trust me with that. Why would I not? He looked genuinely puzzled by the question, because the Thorntons had told her repeatedly that she was worthless, that she could not be trusted with anything important, that she was lucky they tolerated her at all. But she did not say that. Instead, she just nodded. I would like that very much. They stood in comfortable silence, watching Dancer explore the corral, The sun was warm on Lillian's face, and the air smelled like earth and animals and possibility. She felt something shift inside her, some locked and frozen part of her beginning to thaw. Over the next few weeks, Lillian slowly regained her strength. Mrs. Chen continued to feed her regularly, insisting she eat even when she claimed not to be hungry. The bandages came off her hands and feet, revealing pink new skin underneath. The bruises faded from purple to yellow to nothing. She began to help around the house, gently at first, then with more confidence as Mrs. Chen taught her to cook properly and manage a household. Benjamin was respectful and kind, treating her like a valued guest rather than a burden. He asked her opinion on things, listened when she spoke, and never made her feel like she owed him anything. Slowly, Lillian began to remember what it felt like to be treated as a person rather than property. She started spending more time with the horses, first just watching Benjamin work, then gradually taking on small tasks under his guidance. He was a patient teacher, never mocking when she made mistakes, always quick to praise when she got something right. She learned how to read a horse's body language, how to move calmly and confidently, how to earn trust rather than demand obedience. "You have a gift for this," Benjamin told her one afternoon as she worked with Dancer. The young mare had been skittish when Lillian first started working with her, but now she followed Lillian around the corral like a faithful dog. "I just do what you taught me," Lillian protested, but she felt a flush of pride at the compliment. "I taught you the basics. You brought something else to it, a gentleness, an understanding." He smiled at her, and Lillian felt her heart skip in a way that had nothing to do with exertion. She had been trying not to think about the fact that she was falling in love with Benjamin Stone. It seemed ungrateful somehow, like she was taking advantage of his kindness. But she could not help the way her pulse quickened when he smiled at her, or the way she found herself watching for him throughout the day, or the way his voice made her feel safe and warm. She told herself it was just gratitude, that once she was fully recovered and had some distance, these feelings would fade. But deep down, she knew better. This was real as anything she had ever felt, and it terrified her. One evening in late March after dinner, Benjamin asked if she would take a walk with him. Mrs. Chen gave them a knowing look but said nothing, just shooed them out of the house with orders to enjoy the spring air. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The air was mild, with just a hint of the summer warmth to come. They walked toward a small rise behind the house, where a stand of cottonwood trees provided shelter from the wind. "I have been thinking," Benjamin said as they walked, his hands in his pockets. He seemed nervous, which was unlike him. "You have been here for 6 weeks now. You are healed, stronger. You could leave if you wanted to. Go to a city, find proper work." Lillian's heart sank. Was he telling her it was time to go? "Do you want me to leave?" "No." The word came out quickly, almost vehemently. "No, that is not what I meant at all." He stopped walking and turned to face her, the setting sun lighting his features. "I am trying to say this badly. What I mean is, you have choices now. You are not trapped here. And before I say anything else, I need you to know that." "All right," Lillian said slowly, not sure where this was going. Benjamin took a deep breath. "The truth is, I do not want you to leave. These past weeks, having you here, it has been the best time I can remember. You are smart and kind and funny, and you work harder than anyone I have ever met. You are good with the horses, good with Mrs. Chen, good with everything. But more than that, I enjoy your company. I look forward to seeing you every morning. I think about you constantly. And I know this is probably too soon, and I am probably taking advantage of your gratitude, but I need you to know that I have feelings for you. Real feelings." Lillian stared at him, her heart hammering. "You do?" "Yes." He looked almost embarrassed now. "I know I am not much." just a rancher trying to make a living. I do not have a lot of money or fancy things to offer, but I would treat you well, Lillian. I would treat you the way you deserve to be treated. If you wanted to stay not as a guest or an employee, but as someone I am courting, if you wanted that." "Benjamin," Lillian said, and her voice was shaking. "I thought I was the only one feeling this way. I have been trying so hard not to let myself hope, because I thought you were just being kind, that you could never see me as anything more than someone you saved." His eyes widened. "You have feelings for me, how could I not?" the words burst out of her. "You are the best man I have ever known. You are kind and patient and strong, and you see people for who they are. You make me laugh. You make me feel safe. You make me feel like I matter." She took a shaky breath. "I am falling in love with you, Benjamin Stone. I think I have been since the day you walked into that barn and said I was coming with you." The smile that broke across his face was like the sun coming out. "Lillian," he said, and then he was stepping forward, his hands coming up to cup her face with infinite gentleness. "Can I kiss you?" "Yes," she breathed, and then his lips were on hers, soft and warm and perfect. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, as if they were both afraid of breaking something precious. Then Benjamin's arms came around her, pulling her close, and Lillian melted into him, her hands fisting in his shirt. The kiss deepened, becoming something more passionate, more certain. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Lillian felt like her entire world had shifted on its axis. "I love you," Benjamin said, resting his forehead against hers. "I know it is fast, but I do. I love you." "I love you too," Lillian whispered, and saying the words out loud made them more real, more solid. They stood there in the twilight, holding each other, and Lillian thought about how much her life had changed in just 6 weeks. She had gone from being less than human to being cherished. From having nothing to having everything that mattered. From despair to hope to love. "What happens now?" she asked softly. "Now we take it one day at a time," Benjamin said. "I court you properly. I ask Mrs. Chen to chaperone us so nobody in town can say anything improper is happening. And when you are ready, when you are sure this is what you want, I ask you to marry me." He pulled back to look at her. "But only when you are ready. No pressure, no expectations. We have time." "I do not need time to know what I want," Lillian said, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. "But I understand if you need time. This is all new to me, and I want to do it right. I want to court properly, get to know each other better, build something solid." "Then that is what we will do." Benjamin kissed her again, soft and sweet, then took her hand. "Come on. We should get back before Mrs. Chen sends out a search party." They walked back to the house hand in hand, and Lillian felt like she was floating. Mrs. Chen took one look at their faces when they came in and nodded with satisfaction. "About time," she said in her matter-of-fact way. "I was starting to think you two were blind." Benjamin laughed, and Lillian found herself laughing too, the sound bubbling up from somewhere deep inside. When had she last laughed like this, free and unguarded? She could not remember. The spring turned into summer, and their courtship unfolded like a flower opening to the sun. Benjamin was true to his word, conducting everything with perfect propriety. He asked her father's permission, or would have if her father had been alive. So instead he asked Mrs. Chen, who gave her blessing with tears in her eyes. They went on picnics, with Mrs. Chen accompanying them as chaperone. They went to church socials in Guthrie, and Benjamin introduced Lillian to his friends and neighbors as the woman he was courting. There were some raised eyebrows and some questions about where she had come from, but Benjamin shut down any gossip with a look. Lillian discovered that Benjamin had not been exaggerating about his lack of wealth. He was comfortable but not rich, a working rancher who spent long days in the saddle and longer nights doing paperwork by lamplight. But he shared everything he had freely, never making her feel like a burden. She worked alongside him, learning the business of horse training from the ground up. She discovered she had a real talent for it, especially with the difficult cases. Horses that were nervous or traumatized responded to her in ways they did not respond to anyone else. Word began to spread, and soon people were bringing their problem horses to the Stone Ranch specifically to have Lillian work with them. "You are building a reputation," Benjamin told her proudly one evening after she had successfully gentled a horse that 2 other trainers had given up on. "People are starting to call you the horse whisperer." "That is ridiculous," Lillian said, but she could not help smiling. She had never been good at anything before, or at least the Thorntons had convinced her she was not. Having a skill, being valued for what she could do, was a revelation. On a warm evening in July, Benjamin took her back to the cottonwood grove where he had first confessed his feelings. The trees were in full leaf now, creating a canopy of green overhead. Fireflies danced in the gathering dusk, and somewhere a mockingbird sang its complex song. "Lillian," Benjamin said, taking both her hands in his, "I know we have only been courting for a few months, but I have never been more certain of anything in my life. You are my best friend, my partner, the person I want to wake up next to every morning for the rest of my life." He released one of her hands to pull a small box from his pocket. "Will you marry me?" He opened the box to reveal a simple gold band with a small diamond, nothing fancy but clearly chosen with care. Lillian looked at the ring, then at Benjamin's face, at the love and hope shining in his eyes, and felt her own eyes fill with tears. "Yes," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "Yes, Benjamin, I will marry you." He slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into a kiss that was passionate and tender and full of promise. When they broke apart, both laughing and crying at the same time, Lillian felt like her heart might burst from happiness. They were married in August in the small church in Guthrie. Mrs. Chen stood up with Lillian, having become as close as a mother to her. Benjamin's sister Clara came up from San Antonio with her husband and children, and Lillian loved her immediately. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt, and when the preacher pronounced them man and wife, Benjamin kissed her like he never wanted to stop. The wedding night was gentle and sweet, Benjamin taking his time to make sure Lillian felt safe and cherished. She had been nervous, having no experience with physical intimacy, but Benjamin was patient and loving, and by the end of the night she felt like they had truly become one person in the eyes of God and each other. Married life suited them both. They worked side by side during the day, building the ranch into something successful and respected. At night, they talked for hours about everything and nothing, learning each other's hopes and dreams and fears. They made love with increasing confidence and joy, discovering what pleased each other, building intimacy along with everything else. Mrs. Chen continued to live with them, running the household and treating them both like her children. She was delighted when, the following spring, Lillian discovered she was pregnant. "A baby," Mrs. Chen said, her eyes shining. "Finally, a baby in this house." Benjamin was over the moon, treating Lillian like she was made of glass despite her protests that she was perfectly capable of continuing to work. They compromised, with Lillian taking on less strenuous tasks as her pregnancy progressed, but still helping with the horses she loved so much. The pregnancy was not easy. Lillian suffered from terrible nausea in the early months and swelling in the later ones, but Benjamin was there through all of it, holding her hair when she was sick, rubbing her aching feet at night, reading to her when she could not sleep. In November of 1886, after 16 hours of difficult labor with Mrs. Chen and the local midwife in attendance, Lillian gave birth to a healthy baby boy. They named him Samuel, after Lillian's father, and Benjamin cried when he held his son for the first time. "He is perfect," Benjamin whispered, looking down at the tiny red face. "You are perfect. Thank you, Lillian. Thank you for this." Lillian, exhausted and sore but happy, reached up to touch his face. "Thank you for saving me," she said softly, "for loving me, for giving me this life." "I will never stop loving you," Benjamin promised. "Never, for as long as I live." Samuel was a colicky baby who cried often and slept rarely, but neither of his parents minded. Benjamin walked the floor with him at night, singing old cowboy songs in his deep voice until the baby settled. Lillian nursed him while watching the sunrise, marveling at the perfection of his tiny fingers and toes. As Samuel grew into a toddler, Lillian found herself pregnant again. This time it was an easier pregnancy, and in May of 1888 she gave birth to a daughter they named Clara after Benjamin's sister. Clara was a calm baby, content to watch the world with wide blue eyes that matched her father's. The ranch continued to prosper. Benjamin's reputation as a horse trainer grew, and Lillian's gift with difficult animals became legendary in the territory. They hired additional help as the business expanded, treating their employees with the same respect and fairness that Benjamin had always shown. One evening when Samuel was 4 and Clara was 2, Lillian was sitting on the porch watching Benjamin play with the children. Samuel was trying to teach his father some complex game he had invented, while Clara toddled after them laughing. The sun was setting, painting everything in golden light, and Lillian felt a profound sense of contentment. Mrs. Chen came out and sat down beside her, wiping her hands on her apron. "You are thinking again," the older woman observed. "Just remembering," Lillian said. "Thinking about how different my life could have been. But that is past. This is now." Mrs. Chen gestured to the scene before them. "You have good husband, beautiful children, good life. That is what matters." "I know," Lillian smiled. "I just want to appreciate it, you know. I never want to take this for granted." "You will not," Mrs. Chen said with certainty. "You know what it is to have nothing. That makes you grateful for what you have." She was right. Lillian never forgot the month she had spent with the Thorntons, the feeling of being less than human. She carried those memories with her always, not as wounds but as reminders of how precious her current life was. Years passed, marked by the turning of seasons and the growing of children. Samuel grew tall and serious like his father, with a gentle way with animals and people both. Clara was more adventurous, always getting into mischief, but with such charm that it was hard to stay angry with her. A third child, a boy they named William, was born when Samuel was 7 and Clara was 5. Will was the most outgoing of the three, making friends with everyone he met. Benjamin aged gracefully, his dark hair showing threads of silver at the temples. He remained strong and capable, still working the ranch every day but also taking time to teach his children the things they needed to know. He was a patient father, never raising his voice in anger, always ready with guidance and support. Lillian blossomed in her role as wife, mother, and horse trainer. The scared, broken woman who had arrived at the ranch all those years ago was gone, replaced by someone confident and capable. She ran the training operation with skill, employing several assistants and taking on the most challenging cases herself. The ranch became known throughout the territory as the place to take horses that others had given up on. Mrs. Chen remained with them, becoming an honorary grandmother to the children. She taught them to speak Chinese, to cook traditional dishes, to understand that family was not just about blood but about love and loyalty. When she died peacefully in her sleep at the age of 72, the entire family mourned her as they would have a blood relative. The Oklahoma Territory changed around them. More settlers arrived, towns grew, the railroad expanded. There was talk of statehood, of Oklahoma joining the Union as a full state, rather than a territory. Benjamin and Lillian followed the developments with interest, occasionally traveling to Guthrie for civic meetings and discussions about the future. Through it all, their love remained constant. They still held hands when they walked together. They still stole kisses when the children were not looking. They still talked for hours about anything and everything. The passion of their early days had matured into something deeper and more enduring, a partnership built on respect and trust and genuine affection. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Benjamin took Lillian back to the cottonwood grove where he had proposed. The trees were even larger now, their branches creating a cathedral of green overhead. It was summer again, fireflies dancing in the dusk just as they had all those years ago. "You remember the first time I brought you here?" Benjamin asked, pulling Lillian close to his side. "Of course." "You were so nervous I thought you might bolt." She smiled at the memory. "You stumbled over your words trying to tell me you had feelings for me." "I was terrified," he admitted. "I thought maybe you only saw me as a rescuer, someone you were grateful to but did not actually love." "I was equally terrified," Lillian said. "I thought you could never love someone as broken as I was. You were never broken." Benjamin turned to face her, his hands on her shoulders. "Hurt, yes, damaged by terrible people, but never broken. Your spirit, your strength, your capacity for love, all of that was still there. I just helped you remember it." "You saved my life," Lillian said seriously. "In every way that matters, Benjamin, you saved my life. And you saved mine right back." He cupped her face in his hands. "Before you, I was just going through the motions. Working, surviving, but not really living. You gave me purpose, joy, a family. Everything good in my life comes from you." They kissed as the fireflies danced around them, two people who had found each other against all odds and built something beautiful together. The children grew and eventually left home, starting their own lives. Samuel became a veterinarian, using his gift with animals to help people throughout the territory. Clara married a lawyer and moved to Oklahoma City, where she became involved in the suffrage movement, fighting for women's right to vote. Will took over the running of the ranch, having inherited his parents' love of horses and the land. Oklahoma achieved statehood in 1907, and Benjamin and Lillian were there in Guthrie to witness the celebrations. They were in their mid-40s now, old enough to appreciate the history they were witnessing, but still young enough to look forward to many more years together. Grandchildren arrived, bringing new joy to their lives. Samuel's wife gave birth to twin boys. Clara had 3 daughters who visited every summer, filling the ranch house with laughter and chaos. Will married a local girl and had a son and a daughter who grew up on the ranch, just as their father had. Benjamin and Lillian settled into the role of grandparents with delight. They spoiled the children shamelessly, taking them on rides through the countryside, teaching them about horses and the land, telling them stories of the old days when Oklahoma was still wild territory. On quiet evenings, they sat on the porch together, watching the sun set over land they had worked and loved for decades. Sometimes they talked, sometimes they just held hands in comfortable silence. The love between them had only deepened with time, weathering the challenges and celebrations that life had brought them. "Do you ever think about that day?" Lillian asked one evening, her head resting on Benjamin's shoulder. "The day you walked into the Thorntons' barn." "Sometimes," Benjamin admitted. "I think about how close I came to not stopping there. I almost rode straight to their house to ask about the horses. If I had, I might never have seen you. But you did see me." Lillian squeezed his hand. "You saw me and you did not look away." "That made all the difference." "I could not look away," Benjamin said softly. "Even then, before I knew you, I could not stand to see you suffering. It was not heroism or anything grand. It was just basic human decency, the feeling that no one should be treated like that. "You give yourself too little credit," Lillian said. "Most men would have walked away, told themselves it was not their business. But you did not. You never have." They sat in silence for a while, listening to the evening sounds of the ranch, horses whinnying in the corral, cattle lowing in the distance, the wind rustling through the cottonwood trees. "I have been thinking," Benjamin said eventually. "Will is doing a good job running the ranch. The grandchildren are growing up. Maybe it is time we took that trip we have always talked about." "What trip?" Lillian asked, though she thought she knew. "To San Antonio. To see Clara and her family properly, spend more than just a few days. We could travel, see some of the country, take our time." He looked down at her. "What do you say? Want to have an adventure with me?" Lillian smiled, remembering the frightened, broken girl she had been and the woman she had become. "I have been on an adventure with you for more than 30 years, Benjamin Stone, and I would not mind another one." They made the trip the following spring, traveling by train through Texas, marveling at how much the country had changed since their youth. They spent weeks in San Antonio with Clara's family, enjoying the bustling city, but also finding themselves homesick for the wide, open spaces of Oklahoma. When they returned home, they found the ranch thriving under Will's management. He had expanded the horse training operation even further, hiring additional trainers and building new facilities. But he was careful to maintain the principles his parents had taught him, treating every horse and every person with respect and fairness. Benjamin and Lillian settled into semi-retirement, still involved in the ranch, but leaving the day-to-day operations to their son. They had more time now for each other, for long rides through the countryside they loved, for sitting on the porch and watching the sun set, for all the small domestic pleasures they had built their life around. As they grew older, they grew closer still, if that was possible. They knew each other's rhythms and moods so well that they could communicate with just a look. They finished each other's sentences. They knew what the other needed before they asked for it. They were, in every sense that mattered, one person split between two bodies. Friends and neighbors often commented on their relationship, marveling at a marriage that had remained so strong for so long. When asked for their secret, Benjamin would always say the same thing: "We chose each other every day. Even when it was hard, even when we were angry or frustrated or tired, we kept choosing each other. That is all it takes," Lillian would add. "And we never forgot to be grateful. We both knew what it was like to have nothing, to be nothing. So we never took what we had for granted." The years continued to pass, bringing changes both large and small. The Model T Ford became common, transforming how people traveled. The First World War came and went, taking some of the young men from the area but sparing the Stone family directly. Women gained the right to vote, and Clara celebrated by sending her mother a telegram of triumph. Through it all, Benjamin and Lillian remained each other's constant. When Benjamin's health began to fail in his 70s, Lillian was there to care for him with the same gentleness he had once shown her. When Lillian developed arthritis that made it painful to work with the horses, Benjamin was there to help her find new ways to stay involved. They celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary surrounded by children, grandchildren, and even a few great-grandchildren. The party was held at the ranch, with neighbors and friends coming from miles around to honor the couple who had become something of a legend in the area. Samuel stood up to make a toast, his voice thick with emotion. "To my parents," he said, raising his glass, "who taught us by example what it means to love truly and well, who built not just a successful ranch but a family and a legacy that will last for generations, who showed us that kindness and decency matter, that how you treat people defines who you are." He looked at his parents, his eyes shining with tears. "You saved each other. And in doing so, you saved all of us too, because you gave us a model of what love and marriage and family should look like. We love you both, and we are grateful every day for your example." There was not a dry eye in the house as everyone raised their glasses in agreement. Benjamin and Lillian, sitting side by side as they had for 50 years, looked at each other with the same love that had sparked in a barn all those decades ago. Late that night, after the guests had left and the house had quieted, they sat together on the porch one more time. The stars were bright overhead, the air warm with the promise of summer. Benjamin's hand was in Lillian's, their fingers interlaced, a gesture so familiar it was like breathing. 50 years, Benjamin said softly. "Where did the time go?" "Right here," Lillian said, squeezing his hand. "Every moment of it, right here with you." "Do you have any regrets?" She thought about the question seriously, looking back over the decades they had shared. There had been hard times, certainly, children's illnesses that had terrified them, droughts that had tested the ranch, the death of friends and loved ones, but through it all they had had each other. "Not a single one," she said finally. "Not one single regret, Benjamin. You gave me everything I could have hoped for and more. You gave me a life worth living, a family worth having, love worth cherishing." "How could I regret any of that?" "I love you," Benjamin said, and his voice had the same wonder in it that it had carried 50 years ago when he first spoke those words. "I will love you until my last breath and beyond." "And I love you," Lillian replied, "always and forever." They sat there in the darkness, two people who had beaten the odds and built something lasting and true. The girl who had been treated worse than livestock had become a woman of strength and grace. The cowboy who had walked into a barn and said, "She is coming with me," had become a husband, father, grandfather, and the foundation of a family that would endure for generations. As the stars wheeled overhead and the night wind whispered through the cottonwood trees, Benjamin and Lillian Stone sat hand in hand, grateful for every moment they had been given, every challenge they had overcome together, every joy they had shared. Their love story had started with an act of courage and compassion, and it had blossomed into something that would outlast both of them, a testament to the power of choosing love over cruelty, hope over despair, and each other over everything else the world might offer. They lived out their remaining years in contentment, never spending a day apart by choice, always finding new ways to show their love for each other. When Benjamin passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 82, Lillian was holding his hand just as she had held it for nearly 60 years. She mourned him deeply, but without regret, knowing they had made the most of every moment they had been given. Lillian lived another 3 years, surrounded by her children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, all of whom had benefited from the love and stability she and Benjamin had created. She spent her final days on the porch of the ranch house, looking out over the land they had worked together, remembering every precious moment of the life they had built. When she died, it was peacefully, with a smile on her face, as if she could see Benjamin waiting for her on the other side. The family buried her next to him in the family plot on the ranch, under the cottonwood trees where he had first told her he loved her. On her headstone, beneath her name and dates, her children had inscribed a simple epitaph that summed up her life. She was loved, and she loved in return. What more could anyone ask? The ranch continued for generations after them, run by their descendants who never forgot the story of how it all began. The tale of the cowboy who could not stand to see suffering, and the woman he saved became family legend, told and retold to each new generation as a reminder of what really mattered in life. And sometimes, on quiet summer evenings, People swore they could see two figures walking hand in hand through the cottonwood grove, their love so strong it had transcended even death, bound together for all eternity, just as they had promised each other so many years ago. The stone ranch house still stood, weathered but sturdy, a monument to the love that had built it and the family that had grown within its walls. The horses still ran in the corrals, trained with the same gentleness and respect that Lillian and Benjamin had pioneered. The land still rolled on under the wide Oklahoma sky, fertile and productive, because of the work they had put into it. Their story became more than just family history. It became an inspiration, proof that one act of courage could change everything, that love could bloom even in the harshest conditions, that treating people with basic human decency was not just right but transformative. Teachers told it in schools. Preachers referenced it in sermons. Writers turned it into books and songs. But for those who had known them, who had seen their love firsthand, no story or song could quite capture what Benjamin and Lillian Stone had shared. It was something you had to witness to truly understand. The way they looked at each other even after decades of marriage, the gentle touches that spoke of deep intimacy, the laughter that came so easily, the partnership that made them stronger together than they ever could have been apart. They had started with nothing but courage and compassion, and built a legacy that would endure long after they were gone. They had shown that love, real love, was not just a feeling but a choice made every day, a commitment honored through good times and bad, a partnership that made everything else possible. And it all began on a cold February day in 1885, when a cowboy walked into a barn, saw suffering he could not ignore, and said 5 simple words that changed 2 lives forever. "She is coming with me." Those words became the foundation of everything that followed, a reminder that sometimes the most important thing you can do is see another person's pain and refuse to look away. Benjamin saw Lillian not as she appeared at her lowest moment, but as she could be with care and kindness. And Lillian, in turn, saw Benjamin not just as a rescuer but as a partner, an equal, someone worthy of her love and respect. Together they built something that lasted, something that mattered. They raised children who valued compassion and fairness. They ran a business that treated everyone with dignity. They created a home filled with love and laughter. They showed everyone who knew them what marriage could be at its best, a true partnership between equals who chose each other freely and kept choosing each other every single day. Years after their deaths, a historian came to interview the Stone family for a book about the settling of Oklahoma. Will, now an old man himself, took the historian out to the cottonwood grove and told him the story of his parents, from that first meeting in the Thorntons' barn to their final days together on the ranch. "People ask me sometimes what made their marriage so special," Will said, leaning against one of the old cottonwood trees. "I think it was because they never forgot where they started. My mother never forgot what it felt like to be treated as less than human, so she made sure everyone around her felt valued and respected. My father never forgot that one person's courage can change another person's entire life, so he looked for opportunities to help others the way he helped her." The historian scribbled notes, then looked up. "It sounds like a fairy tale." "No," Will said firmly. "It was real life. It was hard work and challenges and setbacks, but it was also love and partnership and commitment. They were not perfect people living a perfect life. They were flawed humans who chose to love each other through everything life threw at them. That is not a fairy tale. That is something better. That is real." The book, when it was published, dedicated an entire chapter to Benjamin and Lillian Stone, calling them exemplars of the pioneer spirit that had built Oklahoma. But it also noted that their true legacy was not the ranch or the business or even their descendants, impressive as those were. Their true legacy was the example they set of how to treat people, how to love truly, how to build something lasting in a world that often seemed determined to tear things apart. On the 100th anniversary of the day Benjamin had rescued Lillian, the family held a special ceremony at the ranch. All the descendants gathered, now numbering in the dozens, to honor the two people who had started it all. They placed a bronze plaque in the cottonwood grove, inscribed with the story of Benjamin and Lillian and the simple words that had changed everything. "She is coming with me." As the family gathered around the plaque, the youngest great-great-grandchild, a girl of 5 with Lillian's auburn hair and Benjamin's whiskey-colored eyes, asked her mother a question. Did they really love each other that much? Her mother smiled, looking around at the assembled family, at the thriving ranch, at the legacy of love and respect that had shaped all their lives. "Yes, sweetheart, they really did. And because they loved each other so much, we are all here today. Their love created all of this." The little girl considered this seriously, then nodded. "When I grow up, I want to love someone like that too." "Then remember their story," her mother said. "Remember that love is not just a feeling but a choice. Remember that how you treat people matters. Remember that one act of courage can change everything. And most of all, remember that the best things in life are built slowly, with patience and kindness and commitment." As the sun set over the ranch that day, casting golden light over the assembled family, it seemed fitting that the legacy of Benjamin and Lillian Stone continued not just in blood but in values, in the way their descendants treated each other and everyone else they encountered. They had shown that love, real love, was the most powerful force in the world, capable of healing wounds, building families, and creating legacies that would endure for generations. And somewhere, perhaps, in the space between memory and eternity, Benjamin and Lillian Stone walked hand in hand through their beloved cottonwood grove, their love as strong and true as the day they first declared it, a testament to the power of choosing courage over fear, compassion over cruelty, and love over everything else the world might offer.